It came disguised as nothing, just a morning envelope tucked between reports and royal briefings, but something about it felt off. The seal was unusual, the handwriting unfamiliar, and the weight heavy with an ominous presence. Kate almost ignored it, until her instincts screamed otherwise. As she opened it, a cold shiver ran through her chest, as if the room had dropped 10 degrees, and what she found inside turned her world upside down. At first glance, the envelope seemed mundane, no crest, no insignia, no hint that it carried anything beyond another routine palace task. But beneath the flap, a single sterile page awaited her, marked boldly, "Confidential DNA report." Her breath caught, her fingers froze, and the names on the document blurred before her eyes. Diana Spencer, and another name, someone unfamiliar, irrelevant until now, revealing a biological connection that shocked to the core. She reread it, each syllable cutting sharper than the last, and dread crept along her spine as her thoughts spiraled. This was not speculation. It was clinical, scientific, absolute. She realized she wasn't merely reading results. She was holding a secret the palace had buried, a ghost the crown had tried to silence. It wasn't just a family bombshell. It threatened the very foundation of royal lineage, a rupture in the story meticulously curated for decades. Her hands shook uncontrollably, the paper trembling as she clutched it tighter, desperately trying to hold on to something familiar, while her world cracked at the seams. Her knees weakened, she sank into a chair, and then the tears came, unstoppable, as the gravity of what she now held consumed her entirely. Soul. Diana's name struck her with a profound resonance, not just as a historical figure, but as a woman whose shadow still lingered in the palace, and now that shadow had taken form in a secret thrust suddenly into Kate's trembling hands. The distant laughter of her children playing in the hallway only deepened the surreal horror, contrasting innocence with the crushing gravity of what she now held. What began as a quiet discovery quickly ignited a firestorm, pulling Kate into a truth Diana had carried to her grave, a truth that refused to remain buried. Long before the envelope's arrival, Diana had left a trail. Diary entries dismissed as paranoia, cryptic letters few dared to interpret, riddles cloaked in grief and urgency, all now illuminated by terrifying clarity. Where once Kate had seen only emotional musings, she now discerned prophecy. Diana had been speaking directly to her. Memories of a journal at Althorpe resurfaced, the delicate ink carrying not just sorrow, but desperate urgency, referencing a trusted confidant outside palace walls who had safeguarded fragments of a perilous truth. Phrases once brushed aside, they are machinery, cold, mechanical. They do not protect, they erase, revealed themselves as warnings, not metaphors, messages meant for the one who would inherit her legacy. Recollections of Charles dismissing Diana's writings as emotional nonsense now rang with contempt and guilt, leaving Kate to wonder if she had been the last to understand what others had always known. Piece by piece, Diana's map emerged, deliberately choreographed to ensure the right person. Kate would follow it, brave enough to uncover the truth. Driven by a need to honor that message, Kate ventured to Diana's childhood estate in secret, leaving even William unaware of her true purpose. Beneath the hushed, velvet silence of Althorpe's halls, she was led to a hidden room where the past waited, untouched and explosive, cloaked behind the mundane guise of a duchess seeking a quiet retreat from the unrelenting pace of London, a facade concealing a journey into history, revelation, and a legacy that refused to be silenced. What was presented publicly as a search for solace at the Spencer estate concealed a far more urgent mission, as Kate's heart pounded not with exhaustion, but with purpose. She was not there to rest, but to confront whispers that now screamed too loudly to ignore. After a quiet exchange with a housekeeper who had served the Spencer family for decades, a woman whose loyalty ran deeper than titles, Kate was led down a forgotten corridor untouched by time, unseen by staff or cameras. At its end stood a narrow door, its dulled brass handle betraying its age, and after a brief, heavy pause, it creaked open to reveal a cold, silent room lined with dust-covered boxes abandoned for years. Yet it wasn't the stillness or the scent of aged paper that stole Kate's breath, it was the handwriting. Scrawled in Diana's unmistakable script were the words, "For Catherine, when the time is right." Her fingers trembled as she loosened the first ribbon, unleashing the raw voice of a woman long gone, but painfully present. Letters spilled forth, urgent and unpolished, confessional and at times frantic. Not the voice of a princess, but of a terrified mother conducting her own investigation, driven by instincts sharpened through betrayal. Diana had known something was wrong. Names, meetings, and forbidden questions filled the pages, exposing truths even the palace had tried to bury. Then came the photographs, faded, curling at the edges, yet devastatingly clear. Diana standing beside a man Kate did not recognize, his refined features and confident posture impossible to dismiss. In one image, Diana clutched his arm with an intimacy that made Kate's breath hitch. This man was no acquaintance, but a presence deliberately erased from the official narrative. Another envelope followed, labeled simply DNA, its contents confirming Diana's worst fears with chilling finality. This was proof, not delusion, a truth preserved in silence for decades. As the implications took shape, Kate's gaze locked onto a face emerging again and again from the shadows, one hauntingly familiar, yet impossible to place. The resemblance struck like a blow the jawline, the eyes, the defiant intensity, so unmistakable it stole her breath. It was not William, and it was not Charles, but something far more unsettling. Harry reflected in another man's face. Image after image showed him half-framed, half-hidden, always beside Diana, his presence intimate, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. The unruly dark hair, the restrained smile, the piercing, wounded eyes Kate had seen that looked too many times before, and the thought formed like a gathering storm she could no longer dismiss. Was this man merely a confidant, or something far more consequential? As long-buried rumors surged back with brutal force, Kate realized Diana had wanted these truths found, and now that they were, nothing could ever be unseen again. The whispers that had haunted the palace for decades now echoed with terrifying clarity. A hidden son, a royal sibling Harry never knew. Kate's breath caught as the possibility struck her. Could this man be Diana's child? Not in theory, but in blood, in silence, a truth deliberately buried. She turned back to the letters, photographs, and documents, seeking context, but instead found glaring omission pages blacked out, records erased, redacted files returned from the royal archives when she requested access under official pretense. Frustration drove her to those who remembered. Quiet, loyal voices in the royal circle, older staff and former aides who had watched Diana with guarded sympathy. They did not deny his existence, they avoided it. Their silence was not ignorance, it was fear, a fear that had kept them obedient for decades. One retired footman, living quietly in the countryside, trembled as he saw the photographs. He did not name the man, he didn't need to. They erased him, he said, just like they erased the others. But he wasn't supposed to survive the silence. That single sentence cut into Kate like a knife, revealing a pattern not of neglect, but of calculated control. A deliberate effort to bury this possible heir and suppress Diana's truth. The stakes went beyond scandal. This was lineage, identity, the right to exist. Determination crystallized into fury, but confirmation required the one man who held the answers. Charles. When confronted with the proof, he did not flinch, did not deny, his tired sigh and downcast eyes revealing all. Kate had rehearsed every word of this confrontation, yet when she laid the documents before him, the room offered only silence, cold and heavy with implication. Charles did not glance at the photos or DNA results, his hands folded, expression unreadable, until finally, with exhaustion rather than outrage, he muttered, "You shouldn't have gone digging." The words weren't an accusation. They were a warning too late. Kate pressed on, demanding he acknowledge what had been hidden: the letters, the DNA, the photographs that shattered the carefully curated narrative. Slowly, a flicker of movement, a tightness in his jaw, and the truth spilled from him, resigned and chilling. Yes, it's real. Diana's secret was no delusion. That man erased by the palace existed, and Charles had always known. He admitted it had been a pact. After she died, it had to be done. The calmness in his voice infuriated her more than denial: politics, strategy, a sacrifice for the crown. Kate's voice cracked as she demanded to know who else had signed this unholy agreement, who decided Diana's legacy, her dignity, her child, was expendable. Charles met her fury with cold stillness. The monarchy could not survive another scandal. "We did what we had to do," he said. Composure shattered, Kate's anguish rose into accusation. He had let Diana suffer, die unheard, her truth locked away, sacrificed for the crown. "You chose the crown over her life," she spat, bitter and raw. "You let her drown to keep your throne dry." He said nothing more, offered no apology, and in that silence, Kate realized the most devastating truth of all. He still believed it had been the right choice, that Diana's silence was necessary for the institution she had once loved. Everything Kate had believed about duty, loyalty, and sacrifice now felt cruelly hollow. The image she had upheld, the very one that had once buried Diana, came at a cost she could hardly bear. Yet as she walked away from Charles, she realized the betrayal ran deeper than she had imagined, and the person most torn by this truth had not even seen it yet. The boy who had once promised to protect his mother, now a man forced to choose between the crown and her legacy. When Kate handed William the envelope, silence filled the room, thick with dread, as she waited until the children slept and the palace was quiet. Her fingers trembled as she laid before him the documents that had shattered her world hours earlier. He expected politics, scandal, something distant, but what met his eyes stole his breath. At first, he scanned the top page, brows furrowed, unaware of what lay beneath. Then the names, the comparisons, the cold clinical conclusions hit him, and his posture collapsed inward. For a fleeting moment, he was a boy again, the boy who had held his brother's hand at a funeral, whispered promises to his mother, and clutched at the shadows of grief no one else acknowledged. Now that boy stared at the truth Kate had unearthed, and his shoulders began to shake. He said nothing at first, then whispered, broken, "I always knew something wasn't right." Memories flooded him. Diana's warnings, her fear, the diary pages glimpsed and dismissed, the questions no one wanted answered, the swift silencing of her pain. The truth unraveled before him with terrifying clarity, and the most agonizing part was its impact on Harry. Years of grief, misunderstanding, and distance now aligned in painful understanding. Had Harry always known? Was this why he fled not just the institution, but the identity it imposed? William's voice cracked as he admitted, "I always felt like the crown was a cage, but I never realized it was built on this." Groomed since birth to protect the monarchy, he now faced a choice that could burn it to the ground, expose the truth, and risk everything: the crown, the institution, the fragile image preserved for generations, or bury it again like his father, carrying the guilt for decades. Kate reached for his hand, her tears silent but unrelenting, offering no push, no pressure. The decision was his alone, one that would scar him forever. And while William mourned, wrestled, and questioned, someone else had already begun moving to protect her throne, setting into motion the consequences of secrets long hidden and truths finally unveiled. Kate did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. Camilla's warning was soft, calculated, and deadly, the kind that cut deeper than shouts ever could. The moment Kate saw her standing in the doorway, she knew the woman had heard everything. In the ever-watching maze of palace corridors, secrets never stayed buried. Kate had prepared for backlash from courtiers, the press, even her own family, but not from Camilla, the woman who had once posed as a reluctant stepmother, a survivor of scandal. Yet Camilla wasn't there to plead. She was there to remind Kate how the game was played. With eerie calm, she walked in, sat uninvited, folded her hands, and spoke. Every syllable was sharpened with intent, congratulating Kate on her discovery, not with sincerity, but with veiled mockery. And then she revealed what Kate had feared most. She had always known. Diana's secret had not been buried in some distant archive. It had been passed around, guarded like a weapon, and silenced by those who understood the stakes. Her expression never changed, but her message was clear. If Kate exposed the truth, she wouldn't just bring down the House of Windsor, she would bring herself down with it. "The world loves you now," Camilla murmured. "But wait until they hear what your family did before you became a duchess. Wait until the press starts asking about your sister, your uncle, your marriage." The threats were whispered, intimate, strategic, as though morality had no place here. Camilla spoke of her own survival, decades of scandal, shame, and suspicion, and how silence had protected her, loyalty had crowned her. Diana's drama, she said, had nearly ruined the monarchy, once it would not be allowed again. Kate's stomach turned, her fingers dug into her lap, anchoring her against the storm in her chest. She wanted to scream, to accuse Camilla of dancing on the ashes of a woman she helped erase, but she remained still, absorbing every threat, every twisted justification. Then came the final blow. "You're clever, Catherine, but you're not untouchable. If you go through with this, you won't just lose the crown, you'll lose your children's future in it," without waiting for a response. Camilla rose and left as quietly as she had arrived, leaving a silence colder than steel. Kate sat motionless, anger burning, but beneath it, something stronger, resolve. Camilla's threats were not warnings, they were proof that what Kate held was the monarchy's deepest fear, the same fear powerful enough to silence Diana. And now, they hoped it would silence her too. With walls closing in and betrayal on every side, Kate made a decision that would change royal history forever. She didn't wait. For approval, Kate did not ask. On a cold morning, she stepped beyond the gates of Kensington and shattered the monarchy's silence, Diana's final secret trembling in her hands. The decision had been made long after Camilla's warnings echoed through palace halls, and William's tears had dried into quiet resignation. There was no going back, no waiting for permission, no bowing to invisible chains of protocol. She acted not as a duchess, but as a woman, a mother, a wife, and above all, a witness to a truth too devastating to remain in shadow. Quietly, carefully, she called the press herself no royal advisors, no handlers, just a time, a location, and a promise. When journalists gathered in the morning chill, murmuring in confusion, they could not have anticipated what was about to unfold. The moment Kate stepped forward, they knew this was no scheduled appearance, it was a reckoning. Her hands shook as she held the documents that had once broken her, but her voice rang strong, unyielding, unsilenced. She did not begin with protocol or pleasantries. She began with a name, Diana, and she spoke of her not as a tragic icon, but as a woman flawed, frightened, silenced, fiercely protective. Kate revealed the machinery that consumed vulnerability and spit out illusion, then, with trembling breath, delivered the truth. Diana had a child the world never knew, hidden, buried beneath decades of secrecy and shame. She held the proof scientific, irrefutable, damning a DNA report confirming the whispers were not myth, but history the Crown had desperately tried to rewrite. There was no rehearsed speech, no palace-approved talking points. Only raw truth spoken with the weight of 1,000 unspoken screams. Recorder's word, cameras clicked, and the press stood frozen, stunned, until the world erupted. Within minutes, headlines blazed across the globe. Royal bombshell, Diana's hidden son confirmed by Kate Middleton. The Crown's darkest secret exposed. The air in the shadows shifted. The world did not just listen, it trembled. Support surged from every corner. Women who saw Diana in themselves, truth-seekers long suspicious. Even those who had once mocked her name now faced a reckoning they could no longer ignore. The conspiracies, long whispered and dismissed, now collided with undeniable fact. For the first time, the public saw the palace not as an institution of grace, but as a keeper of ghosted secrets. The Crown no longer gleamed. It bled. Inside, the reaction was swift and merciless. Officials scrambled, statements were drafted, lawyers summoned, contingency plans unearthed. Rooms once filled with certainty now echoed with fear. But as the world gasped, another figure emerged from the shadows, the man Diana had hidden, now ready to claim his truth. For years he had watched in silence, patient, unseen. Now, with Diana's name on his lips and the weight of her legacy upon his shoulders, he stepped forward, calm and composed, prepared to rewrite royal history. No palace staging, no velvet curtains, just a podium, a microphone, and a truth that could no longer be contained. His face bore the quiet strength of one who had lived too long on the fringes of a legacy he never asked to inherit. Yet his voice carried the unmistakable cadence of Diana herself. Poised, emotional, unapologetically raw. He began not with accusation, but with gratitude, honoring Kate, the woman brave enough to do what the institution had refused. He called her a daughter of truth, then spoke the name that had haunted the Crown for decades, Diana. Not formally, not ceremoniously, but with reverence, with ache, with the love that had waited in silence far too long. He offered no details, none were needed, because his presence alone confirmed the world's newfound knowledge. He was Diana's son. For years, he had lived in exile, not from shame, but from duty, not to the monarchy, but to her memory. He had refused to become a weapon, to be used. And so he remained silent as history painted his mother in tragedy, concealing the most powerful chapter of her life. But now, the silence was broken. He spoke of his mother's courage, her desperate attempts to leave breadcrumbs for the future, of a woman suffocating within a system designed to erase anything that didn't fit its image. And he swore that her fight had not been in vain, because her daughter-in-law had finally finished the story she began. Then, with the world hanging on every word, he looked forward, not demanding a place in the royal order, not issuing threats, but speaking with the quiet authority of someone whose existence could no longer be ignored, his voice carrying the weight of history finally reclaimed. The words that had shaken the palace now reverberated across the world. Blood may be denied, but it cannot be erased. That single sentence ignited a firestorm. Inside the royal family, reactions fractured like glass. William and Harry remained silent, their expressions heavy, unreadable. Charles retreated behind palace doors, issuing no statement. Camilla vanished from view, her calculated presence gone. Yet outside the gates, the world was ablaze. Some hailed him as the rightful son. Others decried the chaos his revelation had unleashed. Headlines screamed of succession, retribution, even revolution. But beneath the uproar lay something deeper. A reckoning, a moment when history shifted, not by policy or protocol, but by one woman's unbreakable will to bring truth into the light. As cameras dimmed and the palace reeled, one truth remained undeniable. Diana's voice, silenced in life, had finally been heard in death, and it was her daughter-in-law who ensured the world would never forget.